What's going on, everyone? Today is January 23rd, 2024. My name's Anthony Santini, and welcome to the Invested in Hockey podcast. You're tuned in with me and
Eric Wilson.
And today we're going to be talking about hockey, what happened in the last week, what we think is going to happen in the week coming up, and just kind of all around the hockey world, what's going on. And yeah.
All right, so getting into it, how was your week?
It was pretty chill, man. I mean, kind of getting back into the swing of school and stuff, which obviously sucks. And had class today, and then tomorrow I got two classes hit right in the morning with an 8 a.m. class, which absolutely sucks. But got my paper done that was due yesterday, and I have an exam tonight, which I am not too happy about. But whatever. We'll take a nap, study a little bit more, and then I think we'll feel pretty good about it.
Good. You got to get the nap in there. I'm glad you didn't bail on the podcast just to study for your exam, so it shows your dedication. Happy we could be here today, and we'll get right into our first topic. So
yeah, dude, absolutely. Couldn't bail on the podcast for sure, even though I know last week there was a couple of the boys that bailed on the Ice Dogs game last week. To talk about the first topic, you can't bail on the boys when all the boys go to the Ice Dog game. So shout out Ivan and shout out Davis for coming to the game with me and Eric, but a couple of them unfortunately weren't able to make it, which sucks. And stuff like that, it happens, but definitely a fun game to watch. What do you think about just kind of like the atmosphere of the game anyways, to kind of look at a positive side of it?
Honestly, yeah, I'll bring up the positive side right away. Such a vibe. Best thing about the game was those Ice Dogs jerseys. Like, I am such a jersey advocate. I've never really talked about it on this podcast, but like, I've spent hours and hours just like on my computer looking at those NHL uniform databases, OHL uniform history, things like that. And like, those Ice Dog alternate jerseys are absolutely beautiful. Only thing they were missing was that W, which they didn't get the win, but bright spot of that game was the absolute snipe by Michael Levin. We had the Ice Dogs lose 2-1. It was a great game. What did you see out there?
I mean, I saw a pure Steelheads domination, and the Steelheads are a really good team. And although the Ice Dogs kind of hung in there a lot of the game, and it kind of came right down to the wire because they pulled the goalie with like 40 seconds late, we were saying, like, pull the goalie. Like, they had possession for a long time. I don't know what it was, but it took them a little bit of a while to pull it. And, you can just tell, and we mentioned it just kind of chatting and sitting about the game, how good some of these young players are. Like, some of these players are really talented, and they're going to make a big impact for some of these NHL franchises in the future. But, I mean, just to kind of touch back on the experience, like we were talking about it earlier, our tickets were so cheap, $6 for tickets in total. And I know that is on the cheaper end, and maybe we didn't buy the best tickets. But if you're a family in the Niagara region, or even if you're just a family that has never been to, an AHL game or a minor league game that's in your town or small town or big town, I really recommend going to a game because it was a fun experience. And you saw a lot of fans, you saw a lot of kids, you see a lot of families, you see a lot of students. Like, it was just a good dynamic of everyone that was kind of tuned into the hockey game. So it was a pretty chill Thursday night.
Yeah, I definitely agree. There's more than just the hockey side. There was a lot of fun things going on throughout the game. There's always the classic popcorn, whatever beer, whatever snacks you want to get. So overall fun time and missed opportunities for those who didn't want to go to the game with us. So, yeah.
Yeah, that was definitely a missed opportunity for them. And at least they kind of made up for it last night watching the game. And if no one knows what game I am talking about, it's the Jets and the Bruins. And a game that was highly touted and definitely hyped up coming into the start of a fresh NHL week. So the Jets, who are number 2, I believe, in the conference.
Yeah,
and the Bruins, who are number 1.
Yeah.
Yesterday was a good sneak peek of what playoff hockey could look and feel like.
Yeah, honestly, the one thing I noted, I was throwing on the game during at a 7 to 10 class, which kind of sucked, but I put the Bruins Jets game on, and I saw this preview from NHL Center Ice, and it said, possible Stanley Cup preview as we see the Jets take on the Bruins, and I was pretty happy to see that because I consider the Jets a favorite to win the West. I don't really see them being in that Stanley Cup final yet, but for the Bruins, I obviously have that belief just as a Bruins fan, so we could definitely see that as a Stanley Cup Finals preview. But getting back into the details of the game, I will say more of a defensive powerhouse game, just like offensive powerhouse. I'd say that first period we saw a little more shots, a little more offense. I think it ended 1-1 after that first, but there were some bright spots. What did you see there?
I just saw two teams that are, really dedicated to kind of just like it sounds so like casual to say, but two teams that are really just that desire to win, and the Bruins kind of hosting the Jets coming in, who are missing Mark Scheifele, who's a key piece to their team, and even Gabe Vilardi missing yesterday. Like those are two big players for them offensively, and
Hmm.
it kind of showed with the end result. I believe the game ended 4-1
Yeah,
with an empty netter. So it's tough for the Winnipeg Jets going forward because they have faced a little bit of injuries in the past couple of weeks. Last month with Kyle Connor just returning, and they've always had that next man up mentality that could kind of step up in the lineup and make it work. But yesterday was a great game and could be a sneak preview of what could be the Stanley Cup final this year.
for sure. Honestly, the other thing I'd say is I didn't really give any credit to the Jets for how they played despite being out of those two centers, but we know they have that mentality where Velarde's replaceable on that team because they have so much depth. Scheifele's obviously not like as replaceable, but they looked fine. The Bruins didn't dominate offensively, but they just put the puck in when it mattered, and I saw a little more grit from them up front, especially with a guy like Trent Frederick. I think he played uh, extremely well last night. You still had your big guys show up like David Pastrnak. You saw guys like Kyle Connor all over the ice. I saw him make some really good defensive plays. But I'm really impressed with Jeremy Swayman. That's kind of my takeaway is like he's started a lot more games this year than he has last year. I don't know if you can fact check that, but I believe last year he only had 20 something wins, where this year I think he could surpass the 25 win mark. And I think this is honestly what the Bruins want. No hate to Allmark. I think it's just more of like, okay, we're seeing Swayman really step up, and Allmark's there to support him, to push him, and like that's how you really build a team with those two goaltenders that work together. It's not going to work when you have a Leafs type mentality where you constantly have guys injured, one guy getting sent down, one guy getting called up the next week. Like, I hate to throw some shit at the Leafs there, but what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, I think the tandem that the Bruins have kind of developed over there worked so well for them last year, and kind of this year you see a crack in the pipe where Allmark goes down and Swayman kind of has to step up and play a bigger role for them. And it's almost like they haven't skipped a beat at all. Swayman, who has played 26 games thus far and recorded his 15th win against the Winnipeg Jets this season. So he is on pace to exceed what was last year's 37 game start and 24 wins. But we've just seen a major difference in his game and how well he looks on the ice, just so efficient. And he kind of mentioned, as a now All-Star selected goaltender this year, what a tough summer it was with all that negotiation going on and arbitration. So definitely happy to see Swayman kind of step up into a bigger role. And with a lot of a lot of teams in the league looking for a goaltender right now, it kind of brings up the question, who's going to be on the move, Allmark or Swayman? Because Swayman isn't signed long term as a Bruin. So it's like, are you a little bit scared that he might want to make a move out of the franchise come end of season? Even for Allmark, he just came off of Vezina season. I don't know what type of return the Bruins are requesting for a player of that caliber, but it kind of just tells me that the Bruins are still bought into what could be a Stanley Cup contending team, because they're firing from all cylinders and they don't want to make a move that could kind of amplify their future but slow down the process of getting to a Stanley Cup final. So
Yeah.
kudos to the Bruins.
Yeah. One last question I have for you is, if the Bruins were not as successful as they are right now, let's call it they were third in their division right now, 8 points above that wild card 2 team. What would we be seeing different? Would we be seeing like a lot more urgency to maybe fill their center gaps, right? Like we talked about before the season, maybe how they would struggle up front there. Like, would we be seeing that urgency to move a goalie a lot more? Like, would you see, TSN, Spen Chukotz, all those guys talk about it? Like,
I mean, I think you almost would, but at the same time, because the Bruins are in a spot right now where they are first in their division, you almost don't want to do that. We saw in the interview yesterday with Ken Holland of the Edmonton Oilers bringing on Corey Perry, and the reporter brought up the question and said, they're on a 13-game winning streak, 12, 13-game win streak. What is this addition to the team? Can that shake up the win streak? Can it stop it? And like you're saying with the Bruins, what can bringing on some new players do to an organization. And Ken Holland kind of answered the question and said, I believe it was, you know what, we're just going to make the decisions that make the organization better. And to kind of answer your question, would the Bruins be doing that if they were in third? Sure, I think so, because they wouldn't be able to be in a spot where they could say, you know what, I don't know how much better we can get. And right now they're first in their division. And the question is, I don't think they're able to get much better. Like, what do you really want to upgrade? I know you can upgrade that center position, but why change it right now? Because it's worked so well. And what can bringing a player like, maybe, I know we talked about it last podcast, but Trevor Zegras coming onto the Bruins, what can that bring to a team? What kind of flashiness could he bring upon a team that's always been, built on grit and sweat and hard work? So it's definitely an interesting situation that the Bruins are in going forward, but not as interesting as the Corey Perry situation going on with the Oilers. As yesterday, January 22nd, Corey Perry has officially signed with the Edmonton Oilers. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I think the number one thing that most hockey fans have to agree with is that Corey Perry has been there and has done that, and Corey Perry is going to bring experience and grit and power to an organization. So I think that everything's pretty positive right now for the Edmonton Oilers, and although everyone loves the expression, like, if it's not broken, don't fix it, I think Corey Perry is going to really bring that a little more depth to the Oilers and kind of impact the locker room a little too.
Yeah, definitely a big impact to the locker room. Now, is it going to be positive? Is it going to be negative? Only time can really tell, and obviously we're not in the locker room or anything like that, but having that kind of media presence yesterday at his introduction, if you want to call it, I guess, where he was introduced to the media and to the fans, it kind of begs the question, like, will this attention take away from players like McDavid, like Draisaitl, like Darnell Nurse, like Hyman, like Connor Brown, who's been struggling? Like, will Corey Perry kind of come to the team and take all the attention? Like, I don't really know. As of right now, I would call the Edmonton Oilers a heavy Stanley Cup contender, and although they don't really have a goaltender that could kind of back up that statement, I just think that this is a really appropriate signing considering how well Corey Perry has been. I believe 3 of the last 5 Stanley Cup finals he has been a part of. And
yeah, something like
what
that.
he brings to a team is just, especially at the price at $750,000, like the league minimum to bring him on to play third, fourth line and help everyone in the locker room. I think it's going to be a very good addition to what is already a very good Edmonton Oilers squad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, honestly, I the word heavy contender, I want to preserve it to teams that have made that bigger impact, like Vegas and Colorado. Now, that doesn't mean you can't include Edmonton. It's just, if you bring up the question of, who would win in a series this year, Vegas or Edmonton, I'd take Vegas again. I'd take Colorado again. And that doesn't mean Edmonton wouldn't beat teams like Dallas or I don't know who else is kind of in the race right now, but like a St. Louis or like something like that. They should beat a team like Dallas.
Yeah, like a team like LA maybe. Like,
yeah.
They've always had I think the past 2 years they've had some good battles, but the Oilers kind of just came up short a little bit, or made the series go on a little bit longer than expected.
It's like we all expect it though. Like, you should beat LA. Like, you have to. If you have Connor McDavid on your team, you have to beat the Kings. And like, so although Edmonton's had their bit of playoff success, I'm not going to say they've had failure because again, they made the conference finals twice with McDavid. But that heavy contender word is a tough one to use, and even with my Bruins, I can't call them a heavy contender, but they've been so much better than the Oilers. So I don't think we can use the word heavy contender with them other than outside of that 12-game win streak. That's I guess where you're coming from, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, can't use that word at all. And another word that you definitely don't want to be using, especially if you're in the Ottawa Senators locker room or honestly any NHL locker room right now, is the word gambling, because Shane Pinto has returned. He has finished his 41 game suspension. He is back, and he looked pretty good in his return too. Picked him up in fantasy. He was a nice little addition to what has been a struggling fantasy team for me so far.
Yeah,
but
should continue to be struggling.
Yeah, whatever. But Shane Pinto is back. It looks like they want to sign him to a long-term deal. Obviously, I listened to his interview where he talked about kind of what the past 2.5, 3 months has been like for him. And we got to remember, like, he's a young kid too, and stuff like this could pay a big burden to his mental health and everything that has been going on with him. But Shane Pinto's back. Ottawa looks terrible, and nothing else has changed. Something that has changed is a lot of views on a TikTok recently that we got last week. So we kind of want to bring back part 2 of this segment.
Yes, I'm extremely excited to introduce this newer part of the segment, which is going to involve 2 new countries. We're at 99.9K views on this Canadian roster TikTok. Shout out to Anthony for putting in some of these great players into the lineup, which seemed to get a bit of controversy, but there was also lots of love for putting Sidney Crosby on the team, right? Putting some guys on the team where there was a lot of agreeableness too. So introducing this new segment, I'm going to be looking at Team Finland, and Anthony's going to be looking at Team Sweden, and we're going to be projecting their 2026 Olympic rosters. So I want to say this was a lot harder than Team Canada and Team USA, just because there were a lot less, call it locks on the roster. So I'll let you introduce your Team Sweden roster and maybe give me a little insight on it before I maybe give my opinion on it.
Yeah, sweet. Yeah, thanks for that introduction. And to kind of touch up on your last point that you just said, I feel like Sweden and Finland, although great teams, it was definitely a little bit more difficult and probably took me double the time to make some of the decisions because some of these players aren't clear cut. You know what they're gonna look like in 2 years. Some of them you don't even know what they're gonna look like after the All-Star break. So a little bit more confusing, but I feel like I was able to scrap together what is going to be a pretty good Sweden team. So to start us off, we have Jesper Bratt, Elias Pettersson, William Nylander, Kempe, Elias Lindholm, Philip Forsberg, Lucas Raymond, Mika Zibanejad, Ricard Raquel, Leo Carlsson, Joel Eriksson Ek, and William Eklund. So that's going to be our forwards. For our defense, we're going to have Rasmus Dahlin, Erik Karlsson, Victor Hedman, the young stud, Axel Sandin Pellikka, Hampus Lindholm, and Matthias Ekholm. For our goalies, we're going to have Jacob Markstrom as our starter and Philip Gustafsson backing him up.
Wow, there you go. Like you said, a good hockey team that can compete at the Olympics. I can't complain about that. We want as many close games, I think, as possible. And we want as many teams to be able to compete for gold, right? So
Yep.
I will ask you about your extras on that team just because that way there's a bit of lenience in terms of, oh, this guy didn't make the team or he did, right?
Yeah, so for our extras, guys that even, extras maybe on the fence, guys that, they could change in 2 years from now. Like, perfect example that I'll just say is one former Leaf, one guy playing for the Leafs. Rasmus Sandin and Timothy Liljegren. So 2 players where I think they're kind of on the fence of making the roster, but I can't really see where Hampus Lindholm would lose his spot to a player like Rasmus Sandin, but we'll see how offensively talented Sandin can turn in the next, 2 years. So my extras for forwards will be William Karlsson and Backlund, and then for my defense will be Ekman Larson, like I said, Sandin and Liljegren, and then kind of a hot take, but I think that Allmark's going to be an extra. I don't know how good he's going to look in the next 2 years. I've always just kind of been against him progressing. I feel like he's a descending asset and someone that I've always thought the Bruins should kind of trade after getting that Vezina, but I don't want to hate on him. It is not hate. So
yeah, it's not hate. It's just, again, I like that opinion. I think that for our viewers, they might ask where Allmark is, but again, like if you believe Jacob Markstrom's going to be the guy in a few years, that's totally understandable, right? He's been on a weak Calgary team for the last 3 years, call it, and he kind of has to either get better or have to maybe get traded. So
yeah.
I don't mind Jacob Markstrom on there.
Yeah.
I love you putting Leo Carlsson and William Eklund on there. That'll spark their offense just because they'll be surrounded by so many other studs. Like, what if Eklund gets to play with William Nylander, right?
Exactly. It's like, who knows what these players could look like in 2 years. Obviously, Eklund playing on a pretty bad San Jose Sharks team right now. I don't know what his development's going to look like, but if he could kind of step into a lineup like that and then start to climb up, from the 4th to the 3rd to the 2nd, out of nowhere, William Nylander's like, what? I kind of like this kid on the power play. Toss him on the wall and let's see what we could do here.
Yeah,
because it is a short tournament with short decisions, but something that I know was a little bit of a longer decision for you was this Finland lineup, and I know you were a little bit stressed out about it because you wanted to just give the best possible lineup you could. So without further ado, take it away.
Exactly. And I can't wait for, again, like, these TikTok rosters to be critiqued. So again, guys, feel free to kind of give us your takes. If you disagree with something, that's cool. If you agree with something, let us know.
Roast us.
Exactly. So I'm going to start off here on the left wing with Anton Lundell, centered by Sebastian Aho and Mikko Rantanen, followed by Teravainen, Barkov, and Laine, with Tolvanen, Hintz, and Kakko as a third line, and then Matthias Michelli, Mikael Granlund, and Brad Lambert as your fourth line. Second off, we go to the defenseman here. We got Miro Heiskanen, Valimaki, Lindell, Ristolainen, Hinola, Hakanpää. And then in net, we got UC Saros as the clear starter with Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen and Ville Husso. So I'll get right into my extras, kind of to keep it clear, and then we can go over a bit of like a similar roster style to what you had. But I love this Finland roster. I think they can compete, and I think a lot of these players are going to be better in a few years. And I see some comparisons at center to this. I don't want to call it. I'm not going to compare this to the Team Canada centers, but when I see Barkov and Aho as your top two centers, you're like, holy moly! Like these guys are studs. Like they're always in the playoffs. They're always grinding it out, right? They don't have cups, but they're pretty good, right? So my extras on forward here, I got Rasmus Kupari from the Jets. He's struggling with injury right now, but I also have Joakim Kemmel, who's in the AHL right now. He was like a 16th overall pick for the Predators. Yeah. I think he could be good. Watching him at the World Juniors a few years ago, it's hard to say in 2026, but if he's a rookie, who knows, right? I didn't really see any other good forwards to choose. And my extras on defense would be Henri Jokiharju and Olli Mata. And in net, like I said, it'd be Ville Husso as the extra.
Yeah, definitely a lineup that I think could kind of take on a team like Canada. And I know we did Canada and USA's rosters last week, and everyone had what's the best way to put this? No one lacked say. No one lacked say. Yeah. You know, no one lacked opinion at all with the Team Canada roster, and I'm hoping for nothing less as we look at Finland and Sweden. But for me, kind of looking at this lineup, some things that stood out. You know, Matthias Michelli, that is having a pretty good year this year. Can he keep that up on a team like Arizona that is ascending into what could be a playoff team and maybe a Stanley Cup contender in a couple of years? Obviously, Patrick Laine, who has struggled a little bit. I still think he's a very talented player.
Yeah.
You mentioned Joakim Kemmel, who could be on the fence of that roster. I loved him, and almost a player that has that Patrick Laine-esque sort of game. So I don't mind the forwards. I don't really have anyone that I'm opposed to too much. The defense is where I do find an issue, and it's not with you or anyone that you pick, but I think it's just they're going to struggle a little bit because you have someone like Ville Heinola, Hakanpää, Ristolainen.
Yeah, Ristolainen. How are you going to hide him, right?
And it's like, you know, when that's like half your lineup, like Heiskanen, obviously I love Heiskanen. Valimaki, he still has so much room to grow. And it's just, you know, I don't see these three players being able to stop. Even Canada's fourth line we put last week was, I think, Konechny, Crosby, and Barzal, which is like, how can you even stop players like that? So I think Finland's going to struggle in that aspect, but the goalies just, I mean, UC Saros in net, and then Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen backing him up with Ville Husso as a third option. You can't really go too wrong with that. So a pretty good lineup for you, and I commend you for, I
appreciate it. I think the question for our viewers will be, which roster is better, Team Sweden or Team Finland? Again, like, we try to make them to the best of our ability, but both rosters have some good parts and bad parts. Hopefully they can try and keep it close with USA and Canada, but we obviously know that the States look solid up front, and Canada looks good all around. So let us know what you think there.
Yeah, I think right now everything's kind of up in the air because, like I mentioned with Canada and, you know, responding to a lot of those TikTok comments and Instagram and, you know, whoever had something to say, the biggest issue was I think people were looking too much on the past. Like, I left off Stamkos from the lineup. I left off Doughty from the lineup, Pietrangelo. And I kind of just had a mindset of, you know what, maybe I want to give these younger kids the opportunity. You kind of want to give someone like Bedard or Barzal or Konechny or Owen Power or Jamie Drysdale, like someone that I think will, take the reins for that team. So I think for Team Canada, that was something that I really looked at, and I kind of, see a little bit of that with you as well from Team Finland.
Yeah, when you said Travis Konechny there, that makes me think about kind of what he's missed out on just by being on that Philly team, and it's no disrespect to the Philly team, but being able to play with a center like Barzal, even if Barzal is playing the wing, like that's going to change his career, right? It's going to change his outlook on the NHL. Like, makes rivalries more interesting, right? Like, imagine Konechny playing with Crosby when Philly versus Pittsburgh is supposed to be the big battle there. It makes me think of when Cutter Gauthier mentioned how he loves Pittsburgh or something, or his favorite player growing up was Sidney Crosby.
Yeah.
We saw how much controversy that caused, but
Yeah.
honestly, yeah, like especially with we talked about Bedard and how much he was able to go through and develop just by playing on with the Canada logo on his chest, right? So I think that gets us into the topic of the Calder Trophy and some young guys who, I put Faber on my USA roster as an extra. When you look at the Calder Trophy, what do you see coming, and what kind of forwards, what kind of defensemen? Even I don't know if we see any goaltenders, but does anyone stand out to you? And if so, like, is it actually realistic that they win the Calder? The reason I'm asking this is because we look at some other trophies, such as the Norris Trophy, and we see that the true Norris winner isn't always chosen. Last year, for example, we saw Erik Karlsson win it, and we saw a lot of controversy there where I thought that a guy like Dahlin should have been nominated. I thought he was incredible. We saw Karlsson win it. Not gonna like keep hating on that, but I guess what do you have to say about that and the Calder Trophy as a whole?
So I mean, right now, and you know me, I'm not a big gambler. I don't love talking about gambling all the time or bringing it into everything. But right now, Connor Bedard sits at minus 180. So with him, the big announcement today that he's gonna miss an additional 6 weeks after what's gonna be already a massive recovery, it kind of brings up the question, like, is there someone else that could kind of play that role of the Rookie of the Year? And right now they have Brock Faber, Luke Hughes, Marco Rossi, and Adam Fantilli in the conversation to kind of surround snagging that trophy away from Connor Bedard. Right now, I think someone that is a little bit of a sleeper, and I've been saying it for months and months now, is Marco Rossi. And he's been playing well. He hasn't been amazing. I don't even think he's point per game right now. I think he has like 26 points in 40 games or something like that. But when I look at someone like Luke Hughes, they haven't really stood out to me too much. And the only other person I could really see challenging Marco Rossi to the Rookie of the Year is Brock Faber, who, like, out of nowhere, this guy's a stud.
Yeah,
Like,
they love him.
He looks amazing this year too. They love him.
They love
the
him in
fans love
Minnesota.
him. His teammates love him. Like, he's been really good this year, like on all aspects of the game. So I think a player like Brock Faber can really step in and, like I said, snag the trophy away from Connor Bedard. Unluckily enough, just because he got injured, which sucks. But without this injury, I think Connor Bedard would have been the clear-cut favorite.
Yeah, it's really interesting because both those guys in Minnesota, Rossi and Faber, like, that team is too weak for one of them to win it. I think, like, of course they're sleepers, which means they're not like supposed to win it, but until that team makes the playoffs, which I don't think it'll be this year, it's too hard to argue for them making that impact and difference. So I think that the reason people are high on Luke Hughes possibly snagging it is because with Luke Hughes, he's taking a spot from Dougie Hamilton on that top paper, right? So Luke Hughes, plus 600 on the Calder Trophy odds, for example, like, he's stepping up, not in the fact that his game is better, but his opportunity's there, and that's all you really need from a guy. I guess my sleeper, if I had to choose one, in terms of overall play, it'd be Connor Zary, and that's because that Calgary Flames team, like, without Zary, like, they don't look good offensively. Like, he's a spark.
We were watching that game the other night. They
Yeah.
looked brutal. Who were they playing? It was
But it wasn't the Leafs, was it?
no, I don't think it was the Leafs. I don't remember who it was. We were watching that game and we were just talking about how, like, they were lacking so much size and speed and just kind of all aspects of the game. They didn't look great. I think that's kind of a pretty good sleeper pick for you to say Zary. I was going to say that my sleeper pick, and it might sound a little bit outrageous, is almost Joseph Woll, because he's kind of been, and I know he's not even in the top 10 for odds of who's going to win or who could win the Calder. They have him right now at plus 5,000, obviously because he's missed so many games. It's kind of pushed those odds even lower and lower. But I just feel like Joseph Woll has been a big aspect of one of the NHL's biggest teams. And if he could kind of come back and play maybe like 20 to 25 more games and win maybe 18 to 20 of those, he's got to be in the discussion for helping the Leafs almost come close to winning that division or be in the hunt for it at least.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from. I guess when you look at rookies as a whole, like as fans, I know whoever's watching the podcast probably knows, a selective crop of rookies. And one of the biggest names in, the GTA where we are is Matthew Nyes. Now, Matthew Nyes is going to be a great player and all, but he's surrounded by so much talent that it doesn't always give him the opportunity to display that talent. And the reason I brought up Connor Zary is because I think him and Nyes have a similar potential, similar ceiling. We love that word ceiling, but when you look at that, like Zary is allowed to Zary just has like more, not just more opportunity, but when he has the puck, he can make more decisions on that power play. He almost has just more what's the word? I don't know if you have a word for that, but
Like what?
more
Like
flexibility with like what he does and the players he plays with.
he's versatile. He's like up and down the lineup. He's kind of like a Swiss Army knife. Like obviously you can't just toss him anywhere in the lineup, but you
Yeah.
can almost kind of put him with a player, and after 2 or 3 shifts, you start to see that okay, they're starting to find a little bit of a connection here.
Yes, yeah, that was good. You kind of filled in my gap there, but I guess the process is like when you have Mikhail Backlund with Connor Zary, and then you have Austin Matthews with Matthew Nyes, you can see the difference. Guess what your role is when you're Matthew Nyes? It's to look for Austin Matthews so he can shoot the puck and score a goal. But when you're Connor Zary, a lot more flexibility, right? Maybe you can feed Backlund passes it back to you. You kind of get what I'm saying. But anyways, great players all around. A good rookie class this year. I wouldn't say it's our best in like the last 5 years, but it's probably right in the middle there, right? So
Yeah, no doubt. No
and
doubt.
again, Bedard highlights it, and it kind of gets us into some non-rookies. We talk about some non-rookies here. Who are some guys that maybe are in their second or third year that you're looking at?
I mean, just for players that have kind of been maybe on the decline, I'd say maybe a player like Matty Beniers. He really hasn't looked amazing this year, and he looked really good last year as a rookie. So
Yeah.
he's kind of having that issue of a sophomore slump, but I'm not giving up on him just yet. And
Yeah.
I think that, the next, we look into the next 3 to maybe 6, I don't want to call it like 10 years because you can't really call
Yeah.
building a franchise around a player that you haven't seen enough of. But the sample size for Beniers this year has called for a sophomore slump. And although he hasn't been amazing, I just think that for years to come, he's always going to be a big piece of that organization, and definitely up and down the lineup, he's going to be a stud. So he's a player that I'm kind of looking at, and I don't really, I haven't really gave up on him just yet.
Yeah, I like to hear that. No, I honestly like to hear that because it shows that you saw the potential in the guy, and just because he's in that sophomore slump doesn't mean you give up on him. And it kind of reminds me of Caulfield and how he had that bit of a slump start of the year, and now he's found his groove with scoring goals. But you can't give up on a guy whether or not maybe his stock seems down, things like that. And that moves me into a player like Bobby Brink. He's back in the AHL. We talked about the impact this can have on players. It's a little sad. What do you have to say about that?
Well, Bobby Brink's definitely a player that we love Bobby Brink. Like we think that he's one of the Flyers' best prospects. Even
Yeah.
having like someone like Jamie Drysdale, or when they had Cutter Gauthier, like Bobby Brink's like he's a gamer. Watching him play earlier in the year, everyone was loving him. They had him for the Calder. People were saying he was going to challenge Bedard, and then out of nowhere, he hasn't got a point, and I believe it's 7 games now. So since December 31st, so no points in the new year. And he was being scratched a little bit, left off the roster coming into December. And it was just kind of bringing up the question, like, why are we doing this to a rookie that's played so well? Finally, they decide to make the decision to send him back down to the AHL and hopefully get him a lot of minutes, and he'll play a big role for that team. But hoping all the best for Bobby Brink, and hopefully he can come back and continue his run for the Calder.
Hey, we're staying invested in him, so that's
Yeah,
kind of
exactly.
the big wrap there. I think that lets us end off at the All-Star conversation there. So NHL All-Star Weekend is coming up. I'm excited about it, but I'm not as excited as I was, in some previous years where maybe we knew about the fun stuff going on. We know there's some celebrities there. What's the one thing you're excited about?
I mean, there's a bunch of things I'm excited for. I think definitely the redraft and drafting the players to teams, kind of like when we were a little bit younger. But I definitely agree with you that it's been a little bit weirder looking at the All-Star game because you're almost just not as excited, and maybe like we're
Yeah.
just getting a little bit older. But don't like all sports All-Star games just feel like a little bit forced? Like it's almost like people complain about it nonstop. They say it's corny. They don't love it. I mean, we don't mind it. Usually we get all hyped up for it, and then it's like a Sunday and we're like, oh shoot, we forgot to watch the game, and it's like, oh whatever, I got
Yeah.
homework anyways. So I think it's cool to see all players kind of come together and they bring their families and they're on the ice together, and there's always like the cool photos, like you see players that you think they hate each other, and out of nowhere they're like their kids are playing hockey and they're taking photos and stuff. So it's always cool to see stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think just the draft is something I'm going to look at. And obviously, with it being in Toronto, who knows? Maybe we could head downtown and kind of hang out, see what's going on there, see
I
some
know.
players at a bar or something. I don't know.
That'd
But
be a great opportunity. I guess we'll give a shout out to our one buddy who is going to be working at the All Star
yeah,
game.
yeah.
Big shout out to him. Again, I'm excited for it. But yeah, it seems a little, there's that bit of repetitiveness. It's in Toronto. We can't complain. A lot of people are going to be getting that experience when they're not NHL players just by being in the crowd. Hopefully there's that thing at Nathan Phillips Square too. A couple cool things, but I think next week we'll dive more into what kind of events they have. I think they'll have a little more information for us, to be honest.
yeah,
So,
tomorrow's going to be next week's going to be a little bit of maybe like half NHL, half All Star podcast. So we'll see what's going on. But with everyone preparing for the All Star break, I'm sure all the eyes are going to kind of be what's going to be happening on that weekend. So will ours.
Yeah, for sure. And I know we're gonna have a busy rest of the day in the gym, in the books, a lot of schoolwork. So we'll keep that up. Thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks, buddy. Cheers, everyone, for listening. We hope you enjoyed it today. Make sure you follow us on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, all of that. We're making sure that we're expanding as much as possible, and we will be starting to do a little bit more clips and stuff like that. And
Yeah,
we're looking for a lot of feedback for what you guys think of the pod.
exactly. We keep reiterating it for a reason, because it's important to us. Fans are important. Everyone's important. So, appreciate it. Have a good one.
Cheers.